and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all sorts of good stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, the sun shines whenever Robert Meyer Burnett is in the house, and he is here today, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how are you doing today, sir?
John, it's a beautiful, bright, sunshiny day. I feel like with that intro, I should have some kind of a theme song of something that I should sing.
That's actually not a bad idea. We should just, in general, have a theme song for you. I just think that would probably be a pretty good idea for us to do.
I just hope it's not so cloying, like something like, it's a bright, shiny day with Rob Burnett and his friends. Like, that'd be terrible.
Like a children's show intro. I think that would be great.
Yeah, no.
Hey, listen, guys, we do have a bunch of stuff that we need to talk about here today, and we're so glad that you're joining us. A couple little house cleaning items before we get into stuff. First of all, if you're new around here or if you haven't done so already, why don't you take a second and click on that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to the John Campea YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on all the stuff that we've got going on around here. Also, of course, plug time. We spent the last year working on a documentary about movie trailers. It is, of course, called Movie Trailers: A Love Story, and it is out and available now wherever you live in the world. Worldwide, you can get it internationally at vimeo.com/on-demand/movie trailers. Or if you happen to live in the US or the UK, it's also available to you on Amazon, and you can go and get it there. And a special thank you to every one of you guys who have already gone to watch it, and thank you for all the great feedback. And for those of you who are still yet to watch it, I hope that you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it. Okay, guys. We got a bunch of things to do here today and to cover. We're going to spend the first half of the show taking some predetermined topics, and then we're going to go into the second half of the show taking your live questions. You can get in a live comment or question now to get into the queue by simply using the tip link near the top of the description of this video, or you can enter it in manually, streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show, and you'll be supporting the show at the same time. And all of us here, thank you guys very much for that. Now, before we get into our main topics today, one little off the top for us to look at. Rob, back when I was just a kid, there was some great stuff on TV that, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old John would be able to get to watch. There was Cheers. Remember Cheers? With Ted Danson. That was great. There was Wings with Thomas Hayden Church. And, what's the name of the guy who plays... Oh, the guy who did the voice of Master Splinter, and I'm forgetting his name. But anyway,
Thomas Hayden Church?
No, I already mentioned Thomas Hayden Church. He's also the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel's dad.
Tony Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub, thank you so much. He was in, I love that. But one of the shows that I used to really love when I was a kid was this NBC show called Night Court. And news has just come out this morning. This is just kind of breaking that NBC is not rebooting it, but they're doing a sequel series. They're doing another Night Court series, and John Larroquette is going to be back in the series. And apparently it's going to focus on Harry Stone. That was the main character, Harry Stone, played by Harry Anderson, who sadly passed away in 2018. But the main character of the show is going to be Harry Stone's daughter, who is following in her father's footsteps, being a night circuit judge in New York. And John Larroquette, who won 4 Emmy Awards, by the way. John Larroquette won 4 Emmy Awards for this show. I've always loved him for that. Dan, who was John Larroquette's character, has always been one of my probably top 15 favorite television characters of all time. I've always loved Night Court. Rob, you're hearing this. You might be hearing this for the first time because we didn't talk about this before the show started. No. What do you think about them revisiting Night Court?
Well, I got to say, my director of photography, when I made Free Enterprise, he was nominated for an Emmy for shooting Night Court. So I heard all kinds of, so random. His name's Chuck Barbie, and he's a great guy. He also made a documentary on the making of the movie Silent Running, the science fiction film. So I hope they call him. I think he's retired now, but he's a great guy, and maybe he'll have a job.
Well, what's really great is one of the guys from Night Court that you may not recognize or remember his name. His name was Richard Mole, and he played a character called Bull. He was one of the officers in the court. He's this huge, tall guy. But what you may not know, if you guys watch Batman the Animated Series, he did a bunch of the voices in that, including Two-Face. He was the voice of Two-Face, and he's gone on since then to do a lot of animated voices as well. There's nothing in the official report right now, Rob, about Richard Mole coming back for it. But oh my God, I hope Richard Mole comes back for it too. I
got to mention that John Larroquette played the Klingon Maltz in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and Kirk says, he says at the end of the movie, after Cruise is dead, he says, "I do not deserve to live." And Kirk says, "Fine, I'll kill you later." And then I
didn't realize that was John Larroquette.
Yeah, and he also does the voiceover in the beginning of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The whole opening, he goes, "And it's all the more tragic in that they were young." I mean, it's just, he's had a very interesting career, that John Larroquette.
Anyway, guys, the question for you is, what do you think about this, them revisiting Night Court? I think it's great. It's just a shame that Harry Anderson isn't around with us anymore. It would have been great to see him too, but I'm very excited. I don't know, maybe it's just the nostalgia thing. I'm very excited about this. What do you guys think? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's get into our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them. See, whenever you guys come across a big topic or a big news story that you think we should address here, just head on over 24/7 to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number 1, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Randy Harris. And Randy writes, "Hey, John, I know there were rumors going around that Pedro Pascal had stormed off the Mandalorian set and wouldn't appear in the second half of the season, but he has. Also, he just did an interview earlier today where he debunked the rumors that he was insisting to have more FaceTime than he and Favreau, and that he and Favreau are totally on the same page. What do you make of his comments?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, this is one of those situations where a rumor comes out, we don't cover it as an actual story because, I mean, look, unless you hear something confirming or whatever, this is what the basic story is. So a rumor started going around that Pedro Pascal acted completely unprofessionally, had a little rage hissy fit that he wasn't getting more FaceTime on Mandalorian, and halfway through shooting Mandalorian Season 2, he left the show. And there were rumors going around that the second half of the season wouldn't even have Mandalorian in it and all that kind of stuff. Well, he was just being interviewed in a promo piece for Wonder Woman 84 when the interviewer asked him about that, saying, "Hey, we've heard rumors that you didn't want to do without having more FaceTime." This is what Pedro Pascal said. He said, "That is actually not true. It's a really wonderful way of telling the story. It's always been a very clear creed for the character, and the collaborative process of the whole thing has been, we've all been on the same page with this, I think. So, you know, what I want is for them to make the best show possible, however they get that done." So one of the things, Rob, if you remember, that I said that made that rumor, when people were writing and ask about the rumor, and one of the things that I said that makes it difficult to believe was that just storming off a set and leaving and not coming back to finish the second half of a show that you are contractually obligated to do is not how Hollywood works. And it's not how you keep a career and all that kind of stuff. Now, listen, by the way, I want to point out something here. There was nothing in what Pedro Pascal said that eliminates the possibility that there was some kind of on-set friction. He seemed to be specifically addressing, no, the issue with whether the helmet is on or off, that is a core thing to this character. I just want us to make the best show possible, blah, blah. But I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying there was other stresses or other conflict. I'm just saying that Pedro's comments here did not necessarily completely denounce the idea that there could have been conflicts going on about some other things, which, hey, guess what? Hollywood productions, these things, Rob, conflicts break out. It happens. It's a part of the business. And so, to be fair to how these rumors got started, it is possible that maybe, it started with the fact that maybe there was some on-set conflict and about something else or whatever, and it caused some heated discussions, whatever. And maybe that then broken telephone morphed into Pedro stormed off the set because he didn't get to show his mask. I mean, I don't know. But just to be fair to wherever the rumors came from, maybe there was some other kind of conflict going on. You never know. Anyway, Rob, to me, this makes total sense because of the fact that he knows what the script of season 2 is before he gets on set and starts shooting. He knows what he was signing up for. He knows exactly how this is going to go. And he is not such a temper tantrum little baby that if he didn't get his way, he would violate his contracts and get up and walk off set. Anyway, Rob, you hear about all this. You read Pedro Pascal's comments towards this. What do you make of it?
Well, it's nice that he set the record straight. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was getting into, and when what's really interesting is when in the last episode of The Mandalorian, spoiler alert, he takes off his helmet and I couldn't stop staring at him, and I think I paid more attention to his face in the last episode of The Mandalorian than I've ever stared at an actor in the history of cinema, I mean, and of course he knew, and it's for him. This is a great job. This is not War and Peace or Lawrence of Arabia that he's starring in, and he knows what he's doing. It's not like he's going to emote like Dustin Hoffman in Kramer versus Kramer when he's fighting a court battle to keep custody of his son from his ex-wife. It's not like that's what he's missing out on, and yeah, he's on the biggest show arguably on TV right now, with more press and more ink being spilled, a show that's responsible for massive growth for Disney Plus. He's not doing bad. So the idea, and how many days does he have to work on this gig? Probably not a lot. He can go in and shoot for a couple days and voice the entire season, probably in an afternoon. So it's just not how the business works. I mean, like you said, this story there might have been something cantankerous that happened, but that's the business and that's what people are used to. And it's just, I read these kinds of stories and I'm like, come on, man, this is a good gig for him. And he's got Wonder Woman 84 coming out in a few days. It's like, why does he need to complain?
Well, and on top of that, there have been some reports because for season 1, he was barely on set, like at all.
Right.
Most of the time, he had 2 different stunt doubles that would often be the person in the armor. They had a guy who was a hand-to-hand combat expert and a guy who was a Western gunslinger for camera expert. And it was like 90% of the time, it was one of those guys in the costume and not him himself. There have been reports that he said that he is physically in the suit more this season. He didn't say he's in the suit lots, but he did say he's in the suit more this season, which is good to hear. But you're right. It's like maybe a day, 2 days in the sound booth on the Disney lot recording all the Mandalorian lines, maybe come in for some pickup recording. It's a good gig for him, and I love hearing his voice in it. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this with Pedro Pascal shooting down those rumors? Do you think there was something more to it? Do you think maybe he's just covering things up, which, let's face it, that's what some celebrities do? Personally, I take him at his word here. What do you guys think? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Philip Michaels Trent, who writes, "Greetings and salutations, John and Rob/Aaron. As you know, they've been trying to get a biopic of Whitney Houston together for a while, and I just saw that they cast the lead. They ended up getting Naomi Ackie from Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. What do you think of this casting, and are you looking forward to the movie? Thanks." Okay, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yeah, they've been talking for a long time. I mean, obviously pre-COVID, there's been a lot of discussion and they've been trying to get the wheels moving on a Whitney Houston biopic. And obviously that's hit a lot of road bumps along the way, which, is going to happen. Now, look, straight up, for those of you who've watched me for any period of time, you know that I don't exactly get all excited about biopics about musicians. I mean, that's just it. The odd thing is, Rob, those things don't get me really excited, but I loved Bohemian Rhapsody, and I really liked Straight Outta Compton. But hey, it is what it is. Generally, these things aren't the ones that get my motor revving. But the story of Whitney Houston is one that actually holds a lot of interest for me because it is such a tragedy, right? It's not the stereotypical, because you look at whether it's Rocket Man or Bohemian Rhapsody or a lot of these other things, all these musical biopics follow the exact same formula, right? Prodigy talent, struggles to get discovered, hits it big. Once big, starts to struggle with this abuse or that addiction or whatever, and starts to hurt themselves and self-sabotage. But in the end, they find redemption and they get their lives back on track. I just described 90% of the musical biopics.
Yeah, your favorite.
Whitney Houston's life, though, is more of a Shakespearean tragedy in many ways. And I'll never forget, Rob, what I remember after she passed away, one of the most moving memorial service speeches I've ever heard was actually Kevin Costner speaking at Whitney Houston's funeral. It was honestly one of the most moving examples of that I had ever heard. And because of that difference, because of the fundamentally different nature of what this biopic would be compared to 90% of the other musical biopics, I gotta say, I'm quite interested. Now, as far as the casting of Naomi goes, this is what comes to us from Variety. Aki recently won a BAFTA award for her role in Netflix's The End of the Effing World. She also appeared in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, which we already know, and Steve McQueen's anthology series Small Axe, which I did not watch. She will star next in the heist musical The Score with Will Poulter, who is taking off like crazy right now, and Johnny Flynn. Listen, I'll be straight up with you. I don't have enough of a sample size of Naomi Aki to really have a solid opinion on whether I love her casting in this or not. I thought she was solid in Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. I didn't like the movie very much, but I thought she was solid for what material she was handed. So I did read the director talking about how she just blew them away every single step of the casting process, and she had always kind of been at the top of the line for them. So that's good to hear. Is she the right person to cast? I can't really say, not a big enough sample size, but I trust their casting and I am looking forward to seeing this. Rob, you hear about the casting for this and then moving forward to the Whitney Houston biopic. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I always assume that when someone is cast for a movie or a television show, that they deserve the part, because casting is an art form unto itself. And this probably wasn't taken lightly. And it wasn't something that somebody just decided like, hey, why don't we, this girl is good, let's cast her. I mean, it was something that people really mulled over and thought about. So I usually tend to think that when somebody is cast in a role like this to play an iconic figure, they're absolutely the person that should get that role, because it's obviously been thought about quite a bit. So congratulations to her. And I hope that she doesn't just want to dance with somebody, but whoever she dances with is going to be. She'll have the best co-star ever.
I hope so. Anyway, guys, this is for me one of those ones where it's like, yeah, I'm not often into the musical biopic thing, but this one definitely has me interested, and maybe this could be the breakout role for Aki. Who knows? Question is, guys, what do you think about this? Are you looking forward to a Whitney Houston biography? What do you think about the casting? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, guys, with that down, let's move on to main topic number 3, shall we? And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Drew Larson. And Drew Larson writes the following. Hey, John, I don't know if you're aware. Oh dear, what's coming when somebody says that? I don't know if you're aware, but an audio clip just leaked from the set of Mission Impossible 7. And in it, Tom Cruise berates crew members for not following the safety protocols that have been instituted on all major Hollywood productions. Cruise obviously gets very emotional, talking about the state of the industry and how people are losing their homes and so on. And I personally believe he was justified in his tone. What do you think? Do you believe his outrage was justified? Thanks, and may the movie theaters live on. Okay, man, thanks for sending that in. And yeah, this one came in like a hot fastball over home plate yesterday. This was, I looked at my news feed 1 minute, nothing really interesting on it yesterday. Opened it about 10 minutes later. Everything was all about Tom Cruise having some kind of a meltdown. Some people talking about how great it was. Some people talking about how disgusted they were at Tom Cruise for having this meltdown. Let's set the table for this a little bit, shall we? So, understanding the context, Tom Cruise is right now, and has for a while, been trying to get Mission Impossible 7 put together. They have been derailed twice. One, just because of the mass COVID shutdown. But then specifically in October, their production got shut down again because a couple of members on the crew got hit with the virus, and they had to shut down again, costing them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, time, man hours, scheduling, everything, and it has a kind of a ripple effect. Fast forward now to this week. Apparently, they have a lot of very, very strict rules on set about their safety COVID protocols that they expect everybody to follow. Crews found a couple of guys not following the protocols. They were gathered around a particular monitor. They weren't observing the distance or when they were supposed to be there. Apparently, there weren't masks being removed. Several violations of their protocols. This is a movie that had already had to have been shut down once. And Tom Cruise went off on them. Like, just screamed at them. And here's what was, they got him on tape. He says this: "If I see you do it again, you are fucking gone. We are the gold standard. They're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every fucking studio at night, insurance companies, producers, and they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs, you motherfuckers. I don't ever want to see it again, ever. I don't want your apologies. You can tell it to the people who are losing their fucking homes because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on their table or pay for their college education. That's what I sleep with every night. The future of this fucking industry. So I'm sorry. I am beyond your apologies. I have told you, and now I want it. And if you don't do it, you're out. We are not shutting this fucking movie down. Is it understood? If I see it again, you are fucking gone." And that is Tom Cruise going off on guys about their thing. Now, as when any celebrity goes off on something, there is often differing opinions. A lot of people saying, "How dare Tom Cruise? You don't have the right to talk to people like that," and blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, hey, dude, you're the producer of a movie and you are seeing things that are going to cost, you're paying these people and they're doing something that's going to cost you and everybody else millions of dollars if things go south because they're breaking the rules and all that kind of stuff. Where do I fall on this? Absolutely, Tom Cruise was justified in screaming at them. First of all, can I just say this? And this isn't a generational thing, because people in my own generation have been like this for a long time, okay? People in my own generation have been like this for a long time. In the real world, kiddies, when you screw up, someone's going to yell at you. Grow the fuck up and deal with it. I just, seriously, it is so amazing to me that he yelled at me and hurt my feelings. Grow the fuck up. And again, this isn't a generation thing. My generation is like this. And the generation before mine was kind of like this. It wasn't since like my dad's generation that they actually wore their big boy and big girl pants. It's like, and they understood, you screw up in your job where people could actually get fired or the company could lose millions or whatever. Guess what? You're going to get yelled at. Instead of going off and crying about it, you should crawl off and go, "Oh my God, thank God they didn't fire me." Woo!
Yes.
Thank God they didn't fire me. Rob, the first law firm I ever worked in, I loved my boss. I loved him. And he was a great boss. But I remember the first time I screwed up, we were working in real estate law, and I made a dumb mistake. Like a dumb mistake. And that could have, if my boss that I was interning under, if he didn't catch it, if he didn't catch my mistake, literally could have cost him thousands of dollars. And oh my God, he came into my office and he blah, 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 pay attention to what you're doing. Blah. And guess what? I never did it again. I made other mistakes, but I never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
And I still love him to this day. The problem with people is that everybody only thinks about themselves. They don't think beyond themselves. And listen, I'm sure the two guys like Cruise, I'm going to make a wild assumption here. Cruise probably appreciates these guys he was talking to because he didn't just fire them on the spot. And it sounds like it wasn't the first time he warned them. So I'm guessing he probably, I'm going to assume the best and assume that these guys weren't thinking, F the man, we're going to break the rules. They just probably weren't thinking about it. But that's the problem. We got so many people out there that don't think about how do my actions affect other people? How could what I do and the choices I make have potentially catastrophic ramifications on other people, let alone the people who are gracious enough to employ me and pay me to be here? And they just don't think about it. And I gotta say, I often find Tom Cruise to be a few marshmallows short of a s'mores. Granted, I am still a big fan of his as a talent, and I so respect when he's talking about, listen, you freaking idiots. There are people in this industry who are losing their homes. They're losing their healthcare coverage. They're not being able to pay their bills because our industry has been shut down. And we are supposed to be the example of how the industry can get back up on its feet and create work and create employment and all this kind of stuff. And I've got insurance companies calling me, and I've got producers calling me in Hollywood calling me, and they're all relying on us to show the way that this can all be done. And we've already been shut down before because of this nonsense. And you are putting all of us at risk. When you break our rules, you are putting all of us at risk. That means you're putting that guy's job on the line. You're putting that girl's job on the line. You're putting the people who are paying for our movie to be here. You're putting millions of their dollars on the line, and you don't seem to give a fuck. And I got to tell you, I so respect what he said, and I extra respect the fact that he didn't just fire their asses on the spot, because it was clear from what he said that this wasn't the first time they violated the rules. And so I think he showed incredible patience, but I think he wanted to drive it home. We're not playing around with this. You are putting other people's livelihoods on the line, let alone their lives, because we're talking about a pandemic. But you're in the immediate, you're putting people's livelihoods on the line. We have rules here. We need to follow them. And it's not just our movie, it's the industry as a whole that we're trying to get back on its feet. So shape up. And if these guys are anything like me, when my lawyer came in the first time and gave me a bellowing, hopefully they'll never make that same mistake. A bellowing, massive bellowing. Then I never made that mistake again, and hopefully they won't either. So I get that there are some very fragile little pieces of tinfoil out there that are like, you're not supposed, you can't treat people like that. You can't yell. Be grateful it was only yelling and not firing. I mean, I just grow the hell up. I love what Tom Cruise said. I think he was right on the money with it. And at the same time, I thought he was very gracious and showed great patience with them, letting them keep their jobs, despite the fact that they clearly broke the rules. Anyway, Rob, that is my feelings about this. What did you think about this whole Tom Cruise situation?
Well, first of all, 100%. I mean, as if anyone has ever yelled on a movie set before. I mean, give me a break.
Well, it's a daily thing.
I mean, I read a lot of responses on social media on my feed. People are like, well, you just can't talk to people that way. I'm like, what planet do you live on? You know, back on September 27th, we had 267 people die of COVID in the United States. The last week, we've had 3,000 people die a day. They've locked down countries all over the world, whether it's London, whether it's Germany now, again, because this outbreak has not been contained. And somehow Mission Impossible, that's already been shut down once, has been able to continue working. And the thing is, the entertainment business, what people don't understand is every movie that gets made, John, is a business unto itself. It's its own LLC, and it can be responsible ultimately, not just for employing the people that work on the film, but local hires, people that bring in food, caterers. A movie is an ecosystem of employment for people. And Tom Cruise was protecting that. He wasn't saying, I want this, I want that. He was speaking about other people. He's ranting about other people's livelihoods and other people's safety and keeping the business going. As we know, our business or the entertainment business is in a precarious fashion. And I think, put whatever feelings you have about Tom Cruise aside. Forget what you know of him. This particular rant, if you take it at face value, and I do, he was protecting his crew and protecting his business. It wasn't even about him necessarily personally, because it's always for him about the job. And I respect that.
Yeah, I just don't know this whole attitude that a lot of people have of, I am a precious little princess and you should treat me as such. No, guess what? In the real world, when you massively screw up and you break rules and you put other people's livelihoods on the line, be grateful if all you get is yelled at, and you deserve to be yelled at. And getting yelled at is good for character, depending. I mean, look, there's a fine line between constant verbal abuse and getting reamed out for a massive screw up, and especially if it was a multiple time offense. So I am 100% on board with what Tom Cruise did here. Absolutely. Again, I will sometimes question his sanity a little bit, yes, but in this particular instance, I think he was more than justified. I think he should be applauded for this. And if it takes something like this to get people on that set to realize, oh yeah, there are rules. Like, what would you rather have had? People who endorse let's treat everybody like a precious little princess. What would have been better for Tom Cruise to do? Walk up calmly to them and say, guys, go pack up your stuff. Your services here are no longer required. We have rules. You know the rules. We've made them very clear, and you broke them. Please empty out your locker, and please, you'll be escorted off. Would that be better? Or to come and say, guys, what the freaking F? You're putting people's jobs on the line. You are costing people. You are risking other people's livelihoods. Don't do it again. What do you think those guys would have preferred to hear? I think they would have preferred to get reamed out and keep their jobs than have him quietly, which he would have been completely justified. If you break those types of rules and you put the entire production at risk, he would have been totally justified to go up to them and say, guys, please pack your things and leave. And then they don't get a paycheck. So I don't know.
And, from a monetary situation, I don't think people understand on large movies when they're shooting, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a day that are spent. And if they were to shut down, there's insurance people that are called in. There's massive amounts of money that are lost. And the local hires, the caterers, those people suddenly don't have their jobs for weeks right before Christmas. There's so much at stake here, and people don't get it because, John, the motion picture business is only a bunch of Hollywood elites, so who cares?
Yeah. And here's the thing, Rob. I'm seeing a lot of people trying to equate this situation with the Christian Bale one that happened a number of years ago.
Totally different thing.
And I am a big fan of Christian Bale. I am. But that was a completely different situation. That was Christian Bale because somebody just happened to be doing something he didn't like. And you know what? We all have a bad day, right? We all have a bad day that we wish we could take back. All of us do. Clearly, Bale was having one of those days. He was having a bad day, probably. Somebody did something. I think it was one of the ADs or something like that in the background. Did something that he didn't like off in the background, and he just went off and flipped off on. That's a totally different thing from the producer of the movie, Tom Cruise.
It was actually the director of photography.
Yeah, the DP. Thank you.
Lights.
That's what it was. And it's a totally different situation than the producer of the film, Tom Cruise, seeing people violating health regulations on a movie that's already been shut down twice for those things, and they're trying to keep the company alive and trying to keep the business alive and trying to keep the industry alive. It's a totally different situation. You can't equate those two things in the least. But anyway, that's just my take on it. Question is, guys, what did you think about Tom Cruise meltdown rant on that? I thought it was completely justified when you understand the stakes that were on the line and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, again, Rob, you said it earlier. You're 100% right. You've never been on a movie set if you don't think directors and producers yell. But this was completely justified, in my opinion. What do you guys think? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. with that down, let's now move on and start taking your live comments and questions to see what you guys have to say. Once again, if you want to get a live comment or question in here on the show, simply use the tip link that's in the top of the description of this video, or just enter it in manually at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be supporting the show and getting your comment or question on the show if, of course, it is appropriate. Okay, guys, let's get into it here. We're going to start things off here with Stubble McShave, who writes, I don't buy, I think this is one I actually covered yesterday. Yes, this is one I covered yesterday in the companion video, so we'll move on from that. Jesse writes, not only is Cottonmouth as Blade a problem with Daredevil crossover in the MCU, but unless I misinterpreted the ending of season 3, Matt retired the iconography of Daredevil after it was sullied because he no longer believed in what it stood for. The one thing, I don't remember exactly how that all ended. Like, I remember them, the three main characters in the dining, kind of in a diner, talking over, and then the series ends. But let's not forget, at the end of Iron Man 3, Tony's like, I'm no longer Iron Man, and had the arc reactor taken out of his chest. And then the next time we saw him, he's just flying around as Iron Man with the arc reactor in his chest. I mean, and they just kind of gloss over. So I don't know that would be a problem. But I'd have to go back and watch the ending of Daredevil season 3 just to see exactly what the implications were. But even if they did, it's a comic book property. They probably wouldn't hold them off too much. All right, MD writes, hey, John, when I asked whether Warner Brothers had considered lockdowns in Europe and getting the same plan as the US, I meant through syndicated options like Sky or local equivalent, rather than HBO Max itself. Going by Variety, it seems like an afterthought too late. Yeah, so, Rob, a lot of people have been wondering about, especially with Disney, we're now in the era of Disney Plus and HBO Max and Amazon Prime and all this kind of stuff, about all this new programming and content coming, but there's still a lot of international markets that do not have those services. There's a lot of countries that do not have Disney Plus. There's a lot of countries that do not have HBO Max. And so, one of the big problems that people brought up, Rob, when they said, we're going to release it in theaters and on HBO Max. The problem is there's a lot of countries that don't have HBO Max, and their theaters are not going to be open because of the pandemic. So what are the other options? Leasing out the content onto other networks, using something like Sky or another equivalent. What do you see as being some of the possible options they would have to get the content out there? Or will they do what Disney Plus did with Mandalorian when they first launched and say, just sorry, folks, you're just going to have to wait? What do you think?
I think they're going to, I actually had a friend of mine call me up yesterday and he goes, yeah, I just got a VPN and I just subscribed to HBO Max. He lives in Europe, but they don't have HBO Max. And I'm like, so that's how it's going to be, for a long time. And I hear this a lot. It's amazing to me that he's in a country where he can't go to the movies because the theaters aren't open. And he's like, I'm not going to watch social media burn up with all their hot takes on Wonder Woman without seeing it myself as a movie fan. And I think and the piracy issues and all of these things, I get why they did it, but I think it's hugely problematic. And I don't think they really thought it through as much as they probably should have. And the firestorm from the industry, I think, is entirely justified, because the fact is, from a business perspective, their $200 million movies are going to be pirated. They're going to be all over the world. People are going to get VPNs and they're going to be downloading and they're going to be watching these films. And there's going to be no new subscribers for HBO Max from these people. And people are going to see these movies and share them all over the world. So any desire to see them theatrically is going to be killed anyway. And I just think it's not good, man. If HBO Max was available worldwide, or even in more places than it is now, I could probably see it. But they're not even going to get any new subscribers internationally because of this. And that's what they should have been banking on. It should have been day and date around the world. HBO Max has had, how long have they had? But yes, I understand they've got all these deals in place with they should have, instead of paying people millions and millions and millions of dollars that they're going to have to pay out for their contracts, Maybe they should have instead bought out the contracts of, say, Sky for showing these movies for a while and made them some other kind of a deal. So,
all right, yeah, good thought. All right, next up, we got Evan Meggett writes, "Hey, John, I am very ecstatic about FX's Shogun. Dude, that was my most exciting piece of news coming out of that Disney presentation, was FX is doing a Shogun series. Not because I know the world of Shogun yet, but because it's going to introduce me to a new set of action-packed emotional awesomeness. Can you explain to me what makes Shogun so freaking brilliant?" It's tough to put into words. So the basic gist is this. This is back in the day, and this John Blackthorne, I think is the name of the lead character. He decides he's going to find this new trade route, and he's going to, kind of usurp the trade with Japan that the Portuguese have. And he shows up in feudal Japan, only he gets basically it's Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones. Right? He gets caught up with Lord Toranaga Yoshi, I think was the name of the Toranaga Yoshi. And so he's in this feudal Japan thing with the instead of the Iron Throne, they're all gunning for the title of Shogun. So it's a political intrigue thriller with action, and it's tense. It's got incredible characters. Rob, why should people be excited about Shogun?
Well, I've always, because John, like you, I loved the book and I loved the miniseries. And to me, it's almost like an alien first contact story. You're watching this guy from Europe who finds his way to Japan, feudal Japan, which is an alien culture. And he has to deal with not only all the political intrigue that's happening in Japan, but he falls in love and he's trying to figure out how to speak Japanese. And it's just this fascinating, compelling dive into a whole new culture. And the audience, what I thought was so genius about the show is that the audience, you don't speak Japanese and there's not a lot of subtitles in it. So you start to learn the Japanese language along with Blackthorne. And when you're watching it, it's just fascinating. It's the best kind of television. And it appeals to so many different aspects of, if you like action adventure, if you like historical epics, if you like samurai movies, there's so many things to love. And at the end, it's really, again, the odyssey of one man going into an alien culture. And it's compelling stuff.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that.
And not only that, but in the show, Maurice Jarre, who does the score, also scored Lawrence of Arabia. So they didn't have the money to have a full orchestra, but even the music is awesome.
Let's see what they're able to carry over. All right, next up, we got Captain Blue Pants who writes, "Hey, Gio, I noticed on another show and in one of your highlight videos that you referred to Lightyear as a show/series, but it's actually going to be a theatrical movie summer 2022. And congrats on the house purchase." Yes, I had a bunch of people correct me on that. I'm like, that's not true. And then I went back to, oh, look at this. That is true. So there's so many announcements coming out of the Disney thing that some of the wires got crossed. But yes, you're absolutely right about that, Captain Blue Pants. Thanks for bringing that up, man. And yes, bought a house. Actually, I got the final email today from the bank saying it's done. Title has now been transferred in our names. Ann and I just bought our first house. Very excited. That means we're going to be changing studios here in about 6 weeks, but I'll keep you guys updated. All right, next up. J Meister 25 writes, "In my opinion, Finn is the ultimate modern example of character assassination. Wasted potential after amazing setup in episode 7. And now John Boyega wants nothing to do with Disney Plus. Who can blame him? Also, not surprised that Lucasfilm has done this with others. Shame." Well, I mean, I don't know. I often struggle with this about, look, all of the characters, because of the complete lack of a plan, all of the characters in the Star Wars sequel trilogy eventually fell by the wayside. Rey could have been great. I thought Rey was off to a great start. By the time we get to it, they do this last second Hail Mary. Let's say she's Palpatine's granddaughter. And all of a sudden, nobody knows what's going on with her. She doesn't even know what's going on with her. What? Lightning shoots out of her hand when she didn't even know she could do. All of them were. I think they all did the best they could. I think the filmmakers, under the circumstances, they did the best they could. But when you have no plan and you're just winging it from film to film, and you're reacting to what audiences' reactions are, you're going to end up with a hot mess. You're just simply at the end of the day going to end up with a hot mess. I will say this, though. As a big of a fan as I am of actors are owed nothing except a paycheck. I that's a very unpopular thing to say, but I think the role of the actor, while it's an important role, obviously, it is much like the role of everybody else who puts their blood, sweat, and tears into making these movies, and who shows up at the hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who put in their blood, sweat, and tears into making movies what they are. What they are owed is a good working environment and an opportunity and a paycheck. You know, you don't change the movie to suit the whims of an actor. And I'm not saying that's what the situation here is with Poe, Finn, or Rey. I'm not suggesting that was the situation, but we're going to be talking about the missed opportunity of this set of films. And again, I thought the first one was great. I liked the second one, and the third one fell apart because of no plan. And I think they're going to be talking about this series for a long time to come in the classrooms of film schools when putting together a franchise and how not to do it. But that's just my take on that, Jay Meister. All right, next up, Captain Blue Pants writes, I feel like the new Spider-Man film could be doomed to fail for fans because of the sheer number of rumors and wish lists that have been created every day. Makes me worried that when most of these don't get to fruition, it will create disappointment. Rob, that has been one of the big problems for fandom for a number of years. It really came to prominence, particularly with the Star Wars movies, right? What we as fans seem to do a lot, and I think we've all been guilty of this at one time or another, and to some of us more than others, but this issue of we speculate about what could happen in an upcoming movie, but then we get invested in that coming up. And then if that doesn't happen, regardless of how good it is, we go, they didn't do this, so I'm mad at it, right? I mean, and it's something all of us as fans have done from time to time. Let's admit it. You and I have probably done it too. But it's that thing it's that line that we cross from speculation, which is cool, into expectation. And that's why when people say, John, such and such a movie is coming up, what do you want to see in it? And that's why I always start my answer with, whatever the filmmakers are going to give me. I hope they do, certain things from a quality point of view, and I'll be looking forward to this, and this, but I just want to see, like a lot of people ask me, Rob, what do I want to see in the final episode of Mandalorian? It's just whatever Favreau wants to give me, man. Right. I mean, there's certain things I hope they do and hope they don't do, but you don't want to cross that line into expectation. And I hope that people don't take their speculation about what could happen in this next Spider-Man movie and then evolve that into solid expectation where it then becomes the crucible about whether they like the movie or not. And we've all done it. I don't know, Rob, but what's your observations on that whole phenomenon been?
Well, my whole thing is I just want something good. I want to feel that I'm in the hands of a showrunner or a producer or a creator that really understands the show that they're making and why I'm watching it. And when I see something that is incredibly well crafted and I'm by the end, what do we all want? We want to be satisfied by what we've seen. And I think back to like the end of Breaking Bad. I remember when it was over, I kind of just sat there quietly and I'm thinking they couldn't have ended that any other way. And I felt monumentally fulfilled. And that's why we love entertainment. I think our favorite movies, like when you watch something pick your favorite film, whether it's Shawshank Redemption or Back to the Future or Empire Strikes Back or Godfather, or it's fulfilling. You feel like you've eaten a great meal for your mind. And I think that's what we all want. And like you, I want them to show me what they want to show me. I just want it to be really good. Last night I watched the first episode of the 5th season of The Expanse, and I'm like, wow, what a great beginning. I felt intrigued and satisfied and stimulated, and I couldn't wait to watch the next one, and I marveled at how well produced the show is and the scope that it had, and I went to bed last night just feeling great.
Would you say Ghibli?
I was Ghibli, man. And you know what? We live in an age where more often than not, like we tend to focus on the things like, we're still talking about Last Jedi, even though it celebrated its 3rd anniversary yesterday. But you know what? We live in a world, John, where we're getting lots to be Ghibli about. Apparently, Wonder Woman 84 is making a lot of people Ghibli. And I haven't seen Tenet, but whether Tenet is great or not, I'm just Ghibli to have the Steelbook. The 4K Steelbook. We live in a time when more often than not, we're getting so much great stuff, whether it's The Boys or Umbrella Academy or Dark Crystal or the new season of Kim's Convenience. I mean, it's just great. And how much good stuff are we getting? Why are we complaining all the time? Well, maybe because Star Trek's so damn bad, but wait, did I say that? Oops.
Discovery's great, by the way, but I gotta say, I'm a little bit jealous that you've had a chance to see Expanse season 1 already, and I have not. So I'm gonna take care of that today.
There's 2 more.
I'm gonna watch that first episode today. All right. Brazilian dude writes, "Hey John and Rob, Disney Plus finally launched here in Brazil on November 17th last week. Disney announced that they will launch Star Plus as a separate app from Disney Plus in Latin America. Why not launch Hulu instead? Wouldn't that strengthen the Hulu brand? Thanks." Again, that is a big question about. The Star is kind of like a Hulu replacement. It's what's going to carry the Hulu content. So why not just launch Hulu in those countries? There are clearly legal and contractual things at play here. That is way beyond what I know at this point. But look, I think it's clear. If Disney could just snap their fingers and launch Hulu in all these places, they would snap their fingers and just launch Hulu. There's obviously complications to that have caused them to take on this other brand identity with Star and Star Plus. And look, at the end of the day, as long as they get the content out to people, that's what's exciting. But it's a very understandable question to ask, Brazilian dude. Absolutely. All right, next up, Willow writes, "Mark your calendars. April 16th, 2021 will finally be the day that we see the ushering of a new glorious era for video game movies. I mean, hope springs eternal, right?" I think we're talking about Mortal Kombat. I think it was April 16th that they said Mortal Kombat was going to be coming out. And, listen, Rob, I've said this before. I am looking forward to the new Mortal Kombat, but my expectations are very much in check for a couple of reasons. The first movie, despite the fact that I love it so much, was terrible. The first movie is a terrible movie, but I love it. But on top of that, even though you got James Wan, who is producing it, which gets a lot of people excited, the reality is it is a first-time director and a first-time writer. And that just makes me a little nervous. That's all. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I hope it's great. I hope it can just capture some of that fun that the original one had with a little bit more gore and some great finishing moves and whatever. Just be entertaining. And if it can exceed those expectations, awesome. But for now, I'm going to keep my expectations in check. Where are you at right now with your expectations?
I tend to, I'm guilty if my expectations are usually set too high. And I do this to myself all the time, but they're high, John. Because it couldn't get any worse. I mean, look,
it can't get any worse.
We talked about the fact that my whole thing about this is we got a first-time writer and a first-time director coming in, and if this is good, it bodes well. I just love seeing that. To me, is always a victory. And that's what I'd like to see. And whenever somebody makes any kind of a science fiction, fantasy, and horror film, I mean, and this is kind of, well, depending on how fatalities and all that go, it could be a horror film or whatever. And I want it to be great. I want everything to be great. It's too hard to make movies and TV and all this. And I hate it when stuff isn't great.
Here's what I'm looking forward to with Mortal Kombat. I mentioned this on the companion video yesterday, but if the soundtrack can just be half as good, because honestly, I joke about how the first Mortal Kombat movie is terrible, but I love it. The soundtrack of Mortal Kombat is one of my all-time favorite soundtracks. Juke joint Jezebel's coming, that, or Du Hast, or the actual Mortal Kombat theme. It's seriously, the soundtrack for that movie is incredible, and I really hope they can recapture a little bit of that magic. All right, let's see here. A3 writes, okay, but what if Kennedy decides she wants to stay another few years extension? I mean, we're talking about Kathy Kennedy. I believe she's going to be, I honestly believe by the end of 2021, if she's not gone by the end of 2021, I believe she will have announced her departure. I think, I said this yesterday, I'll say it again. She is a great example of just because you are absolutely fantastic at one thing, she's one of the greatest producers in Hollywood history. Just because you're fantastic at one thing doesn't mean you'll be fantastic at something else, being a studio executive. She has failed on a couple of major points. One, I've talked about this for years, her inability to make sure she's on the same page with filmmakers before hiring them. And number two, her failure to make sure a roadmap plan was put in place for the new trilogy of films before they started, and just deciding to take a we'll wing it approach. Full credit to Kathy Kennedy that as of right now today, she has Star Wars now in a place where a lot of people are more excited about Star Wars today than they have been in the last number of years. People are excited for Obi-Wan. They're excited for Mandalorian Season 3. Yep. They're excited for The Acolyte. They're excited for Rogue Squadron. And they're excited for Ahsoka Tano. And they're excited. There's a lot of excitement right now. So full credit to Kathy Kennedy for getting it back into a place where everybody's excited again. That then to me is the best part to start to plan your exit. Leave on a high. And I think that when her contract is up, I don't really, number one, I don't think she's going to want to renew. I think she's going to want to go back to her first love, which is just pure straight up producing. But even if she does want to stay, I don't know that request will be met favorably. I'm not sure, but I mean, anything's possible. Anything's possible at this point, A3. All right, next up. Caleb writes, 25 years ago, my favorite movie of all time came out. I refer, of course, to Michael Mann's masterpiece, Heat. De Niro, Pacino were at the top of their game. Don't forget about Val Kilmer in that. He was great in that. But also so was Kilmer, Haysbert, and everyone else. It's long but crammed with plot, foreshadowing, and tension, all building to the greatest shootout in cinematic history. So influential, from The Departed to Dark Knight to the town of the town to Den of Thieves. Thoughts about this movie as it turns 25. Well, Rob, you and I, there have been many times over the past couple of years on this show where we've become sidetracked talking about Heat a little bit. It is, I mean, one of the fascinating things about Heat too, I remember this was talked about a lot, that it was a movie that was really promoted De Niro, Pacino, but they really only had one scene together.
Yep.
And it's in that iconic scene, that diner scene where they're sitting across from each other and the dialogue is so brilliantly written, but all the other characters as well. Kilmer, it's one of his best performances, I think, of his incredible career. It is one of those movies. It is it's not Godfather level, but it is one of those movies that clearly have influenced a lot of movies that have come since, and for good reason. Rob, what are your thoughts on Heat?
Well, I'm a huge Michael Mann fan. I mean, one of my favorite crime thriller movies I ever saw was his first theatrical feature, Thief. And when I saw, I mean, all of Heat it's so powerhouse, from that whole opening, they're stealing like bearer bonds from the truck, the armored truck heist in the beginning. And just the two groups of people, the cops going after, and the casting of the film. But dude, that gun battle, the botched bank robbery when Vincent Hanna is waiting outside for Neil McCauley and his crew to come out of that bank. And there is this gun battle on the streets of LA with large caliber weapons, and the tactics that the criminals are using to get away, like moving forward on the streets. I remember I saw that movie. I didn't get to go on the Friday. I didn't go to an advanced screening. I saw it Saturday afternoon with a bunch of my friends. And it was so jaw-dropping. To this day, man, I put that scene on and just watch that because it is a tour de force of action filmmaking. No CG. Talk about verisimilitude. And you're like, that is just insanity. And it's so well done. And the whole movie, I love that movie so much. God, I love Heat. I'm going to go watch it tonight.
You know what? I'm going to sidetrack here just for a second, Rob, because I see a discussion going on in our live chat that is something that I've seen around a lot. Look, I've been very clear for the last couple of years that I don't think Kathy Kennedy has done a great job running Lucasfilm. I think she's had some wins, but I think she's made some very, very key critical mistakes at the same time. But there is a very strong. So even though I think she should leave the position of head of Lucasfilm, I am not anti Kathy Kennedy. I think she's great at what she primarily does. I just don't think she's a great executive to run a studio. I think that becomes clear, but I'm not anti Kathy Kennedy. Let's be clear. I think when you are the top person in charge, the buck stops with you. And that means for the good and for the bad.
Yeah.
Is Kathy Kennedy the only person in Lucasfilm to make mistakes that led to the rise of Skywalker? No, she's not the only person that made mistakes that leads up to that, but she's the person in charge. She is the buck stops here person. And ultimately, it is her responsibility. It is absolutely her responsibility. So we give her a degree of the blame, the lion's share maybe even of a degree of the blame, because ultimately she's the one in charge. What is frankly ludicrous is that there are some people who are willing to put the blame on her and give her the blame when things go bad, but absolutely refuse to give her any of the credit when things go well. You can't have it both ways.
Right.
It's one or the other. Either she is the buck stops here main person responsible, or she's not. You don't get to cherry pick, oh, I want her to be the person responsible when things go bad, but when things go good, I don't want her to be the person responsible. And you know, Rob, we've talked a lot about Jon Favreau himself talked about this at D23. Kathy Kennedy, nobody wants to give her credit for Mandalorian. Sorry, you've got to give her a portion of the credit for Mandalorian. Kathy Kennedy gets hundreds of pitches from filmmakers all over the world about something we can do with Star Wars, and she gets hundreds of them across her desk. The Favreau one, she identified and said, yeah, this has potential. Set up a meeting with Favreau. And Favreau got his meeting with her, and he gave her his pitch, just like she got pitches from lots of other people for lots of different projects. And she recognized that Mandalorian had that potential. And as Favreau tells the story, it was Kathy Kennedy who then said to Favreau, I want you to work with Dave Filoni on this. I want us to bring in Dave Filoni on this, and I want you to work with him on this. It was Kathy Kennedy who had the foresight to know that the particular skill set that Filoni had would be a good match with Favreau and what his vision was for that thing. And we got what we got. There are many other people, Rob, who could have been in Kathy Kennedy's executive seat that would have thrown the Mandalorian concept out the window with hundreds of others. Many others who could have been in that position would have thrown that script out. She recognized what was good about it, understood that Filoni and Favreau would work well together. So she got Favreau to take on Filoni as an apprentice, if you will. He brought his strengths to it, and we ended up with The Mandalorian. You can't say somebody who is in charge is responsible when things go bad, but not responsible when things go good. And the other way around. You can't give people credit when things go good, yet not hold them responsible when things go bad. It's both and. And, you know, now that we sit back and see what they think, listen, I'm very critical of Kathy Kennedy, and I think she needs to go. But I give her credit for the fact that she's got Lucasfilm right now in a better position than what she put them in originally for the last few years. And she deserves credit for that. And anything else is just sticking your head in the sand, saying, nope, I hate Kathy Kennedy, so I'm not going to give her any credit for anything. Just like there are some people out there who are like, nope, I love Kathy Kennedy, and I'm not going to hold her responsible for anything. It can't be, you don't get to pick and choose. She's either the person responsible or she's not. And that means you got to give her credit where it's due, and you got to give her the blame where it's due. I don't know, Rob, what's your take on that whole thing?
Dude, I'm a Kathleen Kennedy fan, you know, and I think what people forget is that she's not just running Lucasfilm, but she's also trying to have a relationship or do what her corporate overlords that bought Lucasfilm want her to do. And whether you like The Last Jedi, whether you like Rise of Skywalker, whether you like Force Awakens, all three of those movies made over $1 billion. Force Awakens made $2 billion. And while people can say, well, you know, Rise of Skywalker made $1 billion less than Force Awakens, that's true, but The Force Awakens was an anomaly. And Rogue One made over $1 billion. And despite all of the turmoil, they were bringing Star Wars back. They were having to figure all this out. The merchandising is different. The realities of the world are different. And what they did, I think all of this, as far as I'm sure Disney is concerned too, is The Mandalorian, one show that she presided over, has cemented their streaming service and got them way more subscribers and success than they ever thought possible, than all of their corporate projections. She's exceeded all of those. And make no mistake, it was Lucasfilm that did it. And now, with all the stuff they're announcing, she brought this through. Look, the plane had a bumpy takeoff and probably a bumpy landing, but right now they made their corrections and they're going to have extraordinary success. And Star Wars, the future certainly looks bright, and they didn't lose any money in the process, you know, and they've made a great return on their investment, their $4 billion plus investment. So we as fans, like, look, I think The Rise of Skywalker was terrible. I didn't like Force Awakens. I thought that the whole idea, and it wasn't just Kathleen Kennedy, you have to blame what Disney was expecting as well, and what they probably told them that they had to have in this trilogy. But that said, like you pointed out, this success, you got to give it to her as well, because it's all part of the same continuum, the same package. And from where I'm standing, you know, it might have been a storm making those first Star Wars movies, but Star Wars is back in a big way. And she's to blame or to be credited for that as well.
Yeah, it goes both ways. By the way, I'm seeing some people in the live chat saying, and I've heard this argument before, which has been debunked many times. Well, it's Star Wars, so it was going to make $1 billion no matter what. You know what proves that that's not true? I want to Exhibit A little movie called Batman versus Superman. There is no way. I mean, this is what I would have thought, that a movie called Batman versus Superman should not have made $1 billion in its sleep. It should have had the potential to be a $2 billion film. The two most iconic superheroes of all time, in an age when comic book movies are the biggest thing in the world. Batman versus Superman? That could have the potential to hit $2 billion, but $1 billion in its sleep. Well, guess what happened? It didn't. So Don't give me this, if you just put the right title on it, it'll make $1 billion no matter what. That's been proven over and over and over again to not be true. That's just not true. And so, yeah, and this is coming from somebody who says, I believe Kathy Kennedy needs to go. This is a guy saying, I believe Kathy Kennedy needs to go, but you got to give her credit where it's due. That's my take on that. All right, let's get back to the questions here, shall we? Am I in the right place? Yes. Tad's Dirty Keto Kitchen writes, hey, John, thank you for your daily escape. I was 300 pounds and dropped 100 pounds on keto and now run a weekly cooking show page on Facebook. Thanks for your example. I'm still building, but I'm months time. I have 700 followers. Thank you for the inspiration. Dude, first of all, that is losing 100 pounds is no small feat, dude. I lose 10 pounds and I feel like I deserve, somebody should come out of the curtain and give me a gold medal. 100 pounds is huge, but also, again, love it. Create content, do your thing, get out there and do it. And I thank you for being an inspiration to other people to do that as well, Tad. Well done. All right, next up, Wakandan Forever writes, Rob brought up an idea for Black Panther 2 I never considered. He suggested an entirely new, unestablished person will emerge to become ruler. Yes, it is I, the Wakandan himself. I claim my birthright and challenge as king. No, not even I can wear the crown. I mean, look, they do have several options available to them. Again, I still believe it's a mistake not to recast T'Challa, but that is the direction they're going. They have several options. M'Baku, I think, is the most clear, obvious option. Shuri is an option that makes no sense to me, but a lot of people do like the idea of it being Shuri, but even though that one logically makes no sense to me whatsoever. But a completely different character altogether. Rob, let me throw this by you. Somebody brought this up on, I think it was one of my companion videos. And they said, Feige just kind of said they're not going to be recasting Black Panther for this movie. He didn't necessarily explicitly state that we will never recast T'Challa. And I thought that was interesting. Look, I think it's obvious, to me, it was obvious at least that Feige was implying that they're never going to recast T'Challa. But specifically, he did say for this movie, do you think there could be any open door that they don't recast T'Challa now, focus on a different character, and then maybe in another film down the line, they say T'Challa returns and then they recast? Or do you think the message is clear that they're just not going to recast it?
No, I think they're not going to recast it. You know, the movie made over $1 billion. It's meant so much to so many people in terms of the representation it had, in terms of I think the character that Chad Boseman played was so noble, and he was so inspiring to a lot of people. And the fact that he fought this battle and continued to work, I mean, not even as a movie character, but as a human being, Chad Boseman is as an example of the kind of human being that I think we all aspire to be. I don't think you can replace that, even in a fictitious situation. So I don't think we're going to see T'Challa recast. I think T'Challa, they're going to work his noble death into the storyline. And I think that someone else is going to take on, after all, the movie's not called T'Challa. You know, Black Panther, the idea of succession in a kingdom is always interesting. And I think that's what they're going to focus on. And like other things that the MCU has done that's been a departure from the comics, I think they're going to make this their own. And it's going to be really interesting.
All right. Next up, Taki75 writes, I'm very interested in the She-Hulk series and any subsequent movies. The character belongs 100% to Marvel, no Universal involvement. But I assume this version won't break the fourth wall or be as less, I always mispronounce this word. You say it all the time, Rob. Lascivious. I always mispronounce it. Lascivious as the comic book version. I don't expect them to do the fourth wall breaking. And Rob, I can't remember if it was you and I that was having this conversation before. Again, no insider information telling me that, so they very well could. I suspect they will not go that route. Probably partially if Deadpool didn't exist, if the Deadpool movies didn't exist, maybe it's an option, but I think they wouldn't even do it anyway. But the fact that Deadpool has done it so well, I think they would be a little bit nervous of people thinking or having the impression that maybe they're copying. I don't know. Rob, what do you think?
No, I agree, because the fourth wall breaking, again, would just seem like they're copying Deadpool, I think, even with another Marvel character. And the idea of making it less lascivious, I mean, the She-Hulk character has been her ample bosom, for instance, they always accentuate that. And she's a beautiful woman. In this day and age, I think they're going to have to cut down on that anyway. So, but I do think they're going to I could see it being very acerbic and very funny and having a very caustic wit about it. And that I can see them doing something similar, but not the same. But I think it'll still play up her looks. But in the current environment we live in, you've got to be more respectful than that. And again, the fourth wall breaking, I think they're going to change it up. But I really look forward to the show. I think it's going to be great. Well,
having an Oscar-winning or an Emmy-winning actress playing the character ain't going to hurt it either.
No.
All right, next up, Brent Gilson writes, breaking news, reports confirm that Tim Allen will be reprising his role as Santa Claus in the upcoming Spider-Man 3. It's just every day, Spider-Man 3 casting rumors. Thank you for that deep breaking news, Brent. I appreciate that, man. Brazilian dude writes, rewatched Spider-Man 2, the 2004 version last night. So good it is. It is so remarkably, stupidly good. It really holds up. While I enjoy Tom Holland's iteration, I don't think his movies have been able to match the emotional heights of Raimi's movies. I also find the action to be subpar. Your thoughts? I'll disagree with that. I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies have been different than Raimi's movies. I think they've been better in some ways, not quite as good in other ways. I don't know that I myself would say that the action hasn't been as good. I think the action's been actually really fun, but the action in the Raimi movies were fantastic as well. But I really do think there's been a lot of emotional heights in them as well, which is one of the things that I think has made those films work. I think Watts has done a really good job with that. But yeah, listen, there's no getting away, no disputing Brazilian dude. That Spider-Man 2 for a while was like considered the greatest comic book movie of all time for a period of time, and for good reason. All right, KC McNatt writes, "Hey John, what movie are you more looking forward to watching on Christmas Day? Wonder Woman 84 or Soul? In my opinion right now, it's Soul. I wasn't really feeling this movie the first time I heard about it, but everything I've seen makes me want to see it more." Rob, that is the $1 million question. I mean, Ann and I were just talking about this yesterday. We're watching Wonder Woman 84 and we're watching Soul, no doubt. And it's weird. I think Soul will be the better movie, but I'm actually more excited about watching Wonder Woman 84. And I think that has a lot to do with Patty Jenkins, but also a lot to do with the fact that I haven't liked the trailers all that much. I think the trailers have been so-so at best. But I have all the faith in the world in Patty Jenkins. And now hearing from people like some of my colleagues who have already seen the movie, and they are in unison loving it. So that makes me really excited. So I got to say, I suspect Soul will be the better movie, but I'd be lying right now if I didn't tell you that I'm probably looking a little bit. I think the first one we pop on Christmas Day is probably going to be Wonder Woman 84. I don't know, Rob, which one are you looking forward to more right now?
Well, look, I cannot tell a lie. I really do want to see Wonder Woman 84. I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But a movie like Soul, to me, what if it resonates the way, say, Up does? I know that Pixar movies, for the most part, whether it, like Coco, I was mesmerized. I didn't go see it in the theater. I bought the 4K disc, and I was blown away, dude. Blown away. And I'm like, why didn't I see this in the theater? Pixar has always delivered for the most part. And I can't stop but think that, my God, I think Soul is going to be one of the better movie-going experiences of 2020. But in a different way than Wonder Woman 84 is. And the thing is, I'm looking for very different experiences from the movies. And I think I'm going to get what I want from each of them. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, I'm watching both.
Yeah.
Like I am watching both of these movies on Christmas Day for sure. I just probably the first one I pop on will probably be Wonder Woman 84 though. All right. Next up, we've got Ryan Lohner writes, "How's this for a way to introduce the X-Men and mutants into the MCU? WandaVision reveals there's actually been a retroactive House of M situation across the franchise this whole time, and now things are back to normal with mutations around. Here's the main reason why I don't think they're going to do that. That is a possibility, and if it happens, we'll come back to you. This comment, Ryan, that you made. Here's why I don't think so. WandaVision was already a part of Kevin Feige's plan when the Fox acquisition was announced. So far, nobody believed, Rob. Nobody believed Kevin Feige, except for you and me. But when Kevin Feige said, 3 years ago, when they first announced that the takeover was happening, and it's hard to believe it was 3 years ago, nobody believed him when he said, look, I've already got my 5-year plan. I got 5 years ahead of me right now that I've already got planned out. We'll worry about X-Men and Fantastic Four after those 5 years are done. And nobody believed it. Everybody said, no, we're going to see Wolverine in Infinity War, and we're going to see this, and we're going to see that. And he's stuck by it. And so because of that, not that he can't change directions, but because of that, I think he already had his plan for WandaVision. I think he already knew what he wanted WandaVision to be. And I don't think it includes introducing the X-Men or mutants or anything. I don't think that his plan includes that. I think he'll get to it eventually, but I don't think it's going to be with WandaVision. I don't know that. That's not from any insider source. That's just me speculating as a fan. Rob, what do you think the chances are that we get the whole issue of mutants at all, let alone specifically X-Men, introduced in WandaVision?
Well, the whole idea, what they're doing with this multiverse, beginning with WandaVision, obviously we know it spills over into Spider-Man, and it's going to spill over into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I could see this as a very easy way to bring mutants into the MCU, because at the whole idea of House of M, Scarlet Witch got rid of made mutants the dominant people on the planet. And from a comic book perspective, and the MCU, they don't do it exactly like the comic books, but they've taken a lot of cues from the comics, whether it was Winter Soldier or Infinity War or Age of Ultron. And I could see it happening. It's a big ask because non-comic book audiences are going to be like, wait a minute, what? What? You're telling me reality was altered all the way back to the dawn of creation and Apocalypse was really around in ancient Egypt or whatever? I mean, that's a little goofy. However, because there's now 3 different MCU properties dealing with the multiverse, and we know from Endgame that there's a multiverse that exists. Our universe doesn't have Infinity Stones, but other universes do. They've already introduced that concept, so maybe this was part of Kevin Feige's long-term plan.
But I don't know, because remember, he made his long-term plan when he had no idea they were getting mutants or X-Men into it. Right,
but
so,
I think this was a plan that, depending on what we need to do, like he knew that you've got Hulk, you've got Silver Surfer, you've got the Fantastic Four. Everybody was owned by different studios. He also might not have known he could have had Spider-Man either. So you never know. Maybe he built this in case he needed some kind of get out of jail free card.
Never know. It's everything's and of course the baseline thing on this is he could just change his mind. Maybe it was never part of the plan, and like a year ago he said, you know what, now that I had X-Men, I could probably use WandaVision to do this. I mean, that's a possibility too. We'll see how this unfolds.
Dude, I think it's crazier than because the mutants, that happened in the Marvel comic universe, but it's crazier to me that we've got the casts of 2 other different Spider-Man movies taking a cue from the animated Spider-Man movie and coming into the MCU. And if they can do that, I think all bets are off. Because
everything's possible.
Yeah, and I think they say, like, the X-Men are here in this universe. I think audiences now would be like, okay, that's cool. And I think they would buy it. I think 5 years ago, people would have been like, I don't buy that. Come on, man. But now, anything's possible.
Okay, let's move on here. Spaghetti Western writes, hello, John. I'm a recent audience member of your show. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Spaghetti Western. Thanks for being here, man. So my question is, have you listened to the recent audio from the Sun variety of Tom Cruise going on a tirade due to COVID, to crew members not following the COVID protocols? What are your thoughts? Yeah, we spoke at length about that in the show a little bit earlier. Obviously, you sent in this question before the show started today. Again, I'm all for it. I am all for it. He is a producer with a lot on his shoulders. There are people's jobs on the line. There are people's homes on the line. There's an entire industry on the line. There's hundreds of millions of dollars on the line. And a couple of idiots can't bother to follow the rules that clearly they've been told what the rules are and they think they're above the rules. I think it showed incredible patience by Tom Cruise to not fire them on the spot. He let them keep their jobs, but he wanted to drive into them just how serious of a situation this was, because they are putting his money on the line. They are putting his reputation on the line. They are putting the studio's well-being on the line. They are putting other people's jobs and well-being on the line, let alone just putting other people's health on the line by not following COVID rules. So anyway, yeah, we spoke about that at length, and that's generally my thought on it. All right, next up, Mischievous Gremlin writes, hey, John. I remember you addressing you didn't know whether Monsters at Work was canceled or not. I actually went online to find some news. I heard that it wasn't canceled. However, it was delayed until spring 2021. Yeah, so Rob, there was, of course, this Monsters at Work property they were going to try to get together. And then I've heard nothing about it forever. And then obviously the Disney event came and went, and there was no mention of it. So I honestly don't know at this point if the plans for Monsters at Work has just been scrapped. Have you heard anything about it?
I haven't really heard. No, I have not. But that's not surprising because, we can't know everything.
True. But it does seem to me, at least, that if they were going to get rolling on it in 2021, there was a lot of things they talked about that won't be. They talked about things that aren't going to get rolling until 2022.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't know. We'll have to keep our eyes open for it.
I think also it's because so many plans have been pushed.
Yeah.
And what schedules change and things. I mean, we basically lost. You know what? I was thinking about this the other day. We all have gone through the blip that the Marvel Cinematic Universe gave us. It wasn't 5 years like it was between Infinity War
the COVID
and
blip.
Endgame. It's a blip. We literally lived through it, and we are all going to have to act accordingly.
All right. Next up. We got Bucky Naked writes, John, am I the only one that noticed that Lord Feige did not announce any of the villains for the Disney Plus Marvel shows? Interesting. Not really. I mean, when you think about it, once you start announcing the villains, you are starting to reveal what the plot is. Once you put in a villain, those of us, like many of you guys, you're savvy with the comics, and you know that if X villain is announced in that person's series, you're going to be able to start to formulate kind of what direction that thing might go in. They were not in a place right now, other than Loki showing us a trailer for Loki or whatever, but they weren't in a place right now that they wanted to start giving things away about the show, other than the fact that the show is coming. Now, of course, Rob, what you and I didn't discuss all that much was the fact that they confirmed what we suspected, that Christian Bale is indeed the God Killer, or how do you pronounce the first name again? Anyway.
Yeah.
The God Slayer. Anyway, but that was a report that had already been out there for a long time. And so that's one thing, but it's really, I didn't really take any notice of the fact, or I didn't find it particularly interesting that they didn't announce villains, because they're not ready to start revealing any sort of plot details yet, but that stuff will come. All right. Captain Blue Pants writes, one of two. I was thinking about the decline of MTV. With some foresight and investment, they could have become a Netflix for music, with a streamer for high-end musician content, like what Disney Plus had done with Beyonce/Taylor Swift, and Netflix with Ariana Grande. MTV has decades of back catalog with some iconic performances. Nirvana, anyone? Side note, do you see streamers continuing to tap up big musicians as a pool for new content away from TV film? I honestly don't think there's anything else. Rob, I don't know what you think about this. I think the time of MTV, and in Canada, or Canada's version of that was called Much Music. I really don't think there was a future for them. It was an idea that came and went. And, everybody laments that, MTV really isn't about music anymore. I mean, and everything. But the reality is, those networks were starting to struggle. Much Music in Canada was as well, and it wasn't really working. So I'm not quite sure that can happen. As far as, do we see future streamers tapping big musicians? Listen, big streamers are just like big studios or big TV networks. They'll tap big celebrities. If there's something hot at the moment, they will try to capitalize on what's hot at the moment and leverage that a little bit. So I see that happening. Rob, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I see that happening as well. I think you're absolutely right about that. The world has changed, especially when it comes to like music. You remember, I don't know if you were like this, but like I used to live for 120 Minutes, which was a late night show on Sunday nights on MTV that showcased new alternative and new European music, because music was a really big part of my life. I mean, I know you played in bands and everything. Pop music, dude, I poured over the Rolling Stone alternative album charts. I read Billboard magazine. I was really into it. I don't care at all anymore about pop music, and I feel guilty about it. I know so little about modern pop music. If I hear something good, like if Mark Ronson produces a new record, I'll go out and get it because I love him as a producer. But I don't, Billie Eilish, a Bad Girl. I thought, wow, that's a really great pop single. I love that. But I don't pay any attention to music anymore, and I feel bad.
Hey, listen, in my car, I listen to podcasts. So I listen to podcasts and ESPN, so I'm kind of over it too. All right.
Me too. I listen to NPR, and yeah, man.
Timothy writes, I rewatched Shark Tale for the first time in over 10 years. I never realized the pupfish is Martin Scorsese. Yeah, listen, Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, Jack Black, Will Smith. I think Renee Zellweger might have been in there too, if I'm not mistaken. With the pupfish was Martin Scorsese. So he thinks animated movies with talking fish is cinema enough to provide his voice, but live action Marvel films aren't worth his time to view. Listen, look, I was as critical about Martin Scorsese's comments back then as anybody, but if you don't, you've got to understand there's a difference, right? Martin Scorsese, one was a single animated film that was a family film and whatever, and those are staples in Hollywood. Those are staples. When Martin Scorsese made his comments, he was really talking about an entire shift in the industry. about the absolute supremacy and dominance that comic book films had over it, and what filmmakers like him worried could be the negative repercussions of that. Now, again, I was critical of his comments, but to try to compare, I think that's a false comparison, saying, well, how come you're in it? Well, that's a different thing. It's not the same type of situation. So let's, as much as I didn't like Marty's comments about the Marvel films, let's cut him some slack and not pretend that this is the same situation. All right, Wakandan Forever writes, one of two. If I had to choose an established character to rule Wakanda in Black Panther 2, it's Okoye, a seasoned warrior and King T'Challa's personal bodyguard. She can challenge anyone, yes, even M'Baku's. Leadership skills as a general of the Dora Milaje, establishes international relations, personally knows the Avengers. No one is more loyal to Wakanda. She was willing to kill her own husband for Wakanda. King T'Challa, personal advisor in the field and at home. She gets my vote, Wakanda Forever. I don't think it works. I don't think that works, to be honest with you. And Okoye is a badass. Okoye is one of my favorite. The Okoye stuff in Black Panther is some of my absolute favorite stuff in that movie altogether. But she is not a head of domestic affairs. I mean, that's just not the thing. And again, doesn't hold a candle to M'Baku. Again, M'Baku has been the head of government for his own tribe, the Mbari tribe. Why do I keep freezing on these? Anyway, for years, and actually has a claim to the throne and is pretty much T'Challa's equal. Remember, in that movie, he came in a fair one-on-one fight. He, on several occasions, came this close to winning that fight. And he was nearly just the legitimate king of Wakanda as it was, all on his own. So, yeah, Okoye is great, but she is great in her role, right? I think she's fantastic, but she's fantastic in that role. And I think that's her role as being the head of the honor guard, I think is very different from being head of a government. Whereas M'Baku has kind of been the head of government for a while. I don't know, Rob, what's your take on that? Because I know you love Okoye too.
I love Okoye, and if nothing else, if they elevated her position, I might get my long sought after Okoye hot toy. But I loved her performance. I loved Denai. Her last name eludes me. I can't. Guerrera? Denai?
I think it's Guerrera.
I love her. I mean, I just love her. And while I think there could be a really interesting story for a soldier to become a statesman or a statesperson, in her case. And I could see something like that happening, maybe as part of an interim storyline where there is a power vacuum left by the loss of T'Challa, and multiple people end up taking on the throne because there is no Black Panther. So the country would be sort of plunged into turmoil, and that could be a really interesting story, especially if people have said that they're going to bring Namor to be the villain, and you could have something really interesting going on there. And I could see her having to step up and take on a position, but not necessarily permanently. But I do love her character and would like to see her do more.
All right, we move on. Next up, we have Suthius writes, hey guys, finally watched Tenet. Now maybe it's because I love to read and watch about the physics of time and theoretical concepts of time, but I had no problem following the movie at all. I love it. It's now my favorite movie involving time travel. 9 out of 10. All right, well, again, for me, a lot of the stuff with being able to follow Tenet had to do with the fact that you just flat out couldn't understand what was being said half the time. Right. It's hard to follow the story when you cannot hear the story being told. And that's one of the reasons why, Rob, I am very, very excited about watching Tenet again with subtitles. I'm very excited to watch it again with subtitles. I know you're looking forward to seeing it for the first time. So hopefully hopefully Suthius, my second viewing experience will be a little bit, and I still liked it. It's just that it was very frustrating not being able to hear. All right. Last one we'll do with Robert here. Bojax writes, 1 of 3. Hi, John. While I agree with you about your thoughts on T'Challa, one way I would be okay with Shuri as Black Panther would be if they made her a reluctant leader. Maybe no one challenges her claim to the throne out of respect for T'Challa. But she rejects it as well because it's not what she wants, but is forced to take up the mantle in the third act when an outside force, perhaps Namor, threatens Wakanda. One person's name I haven't heard come up yet is Nakia. I was just thinking about Nakia, actually, with Lupita Nyong'o. Lupita Nyong'o is a fantastic actress, and her character of Nakia can fight, cares about the people of Wakanda deeply, and would probably take up the mantle to honor T'Challa's legacy because she was going to be his queen, and continue what he started with bringing Wakanda into the rest of the world. The thing about Nakia, Rob, and I'm so good because I hadn't really brought up Nakia, and really we should have. Nakia is a couple of things. She is one of the heads of her tribe. She was her tribe's representative at the coronation in Black Panther. She is a lethal field operative on that. She understands international and domestic affairs. She interacts more than most Wakandans. She has interacted with the outside world and understands the world that Wakanda currently lives in. She was maybe she became or was about to become the queen of Wakanda. She was about to become T'Challa's queen. She has all those things going for her. The Shuri thing, once again, the big problem with the Shuri thing is that they pretty much set up in the Black Panther movie and others that she can't fight. You know, when there's trouble brewing, she's got to slap on her gauntlets, and that's great, so she can pick up her 6-shooter, but she can't fight. And so that's why T'Challa's mother, M'Baku, Nakia, even Okoye would be better suited to being that other than Shuri, even though Shuri might be my third or fourth favorite MCU character right now. I love that character. Yeah. But I don't. Rob, what do you think about a Nakia? Maybe if they could get Lupita Nyong'o back.
Well, first of all, I'll watch anything she's in.
Me too, man. Me too.
I find her to be one of the most mesmerizingly beautiful women I've ever seen. I just love watching her, and I think she's a great, great actress. I mean, I hated Us, but I loved her in it. She's amazing. But again, I just don't see her character as portrayed as doing that, being the new Black Panther. You know what's really interesting though? This occurred to me as we're having this conversation. What if all three of those women became Black Panther? And there was sort of this rotating, like they're the Three Musketeers or something, and it ushers in a new order, and it's Shuri, her, and Okoye, and they all take that mantle on. I mean, I don't know if that might drive people bananas, but just from a storytelling standpoint, I'm like, that could be interesting. And it's kind of like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, the id, the ego, the superego. You need all three of them on the Enterprise for it to function correctly. What if they did something similar? I mean, I don't think they will, but I could see something like that happening if only for an interim period of time. Could be interesting, but it's not really a movie.
Yeah. All right, Rob, we know you got things you've got to do. Thanks a lot for being here. In the meantime, my friend, where can people follow you and your adventures online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, the Burnett Work, where our intergalactic film festival is going on. A lot of good movies dropping. And in today on the show, I have a new show debuting, John, called Fully Articulated, where I
with your figures, yeah,
toys and figures. I'm going to unbox my Hulkbuster, my Hot Toys Hulkbuster.
Very exciting. All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here, and we'll see you a little bit later this week. Have a good one, man.
All right, man. You too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. We still got some time here, so let's keep on firing through your questions, guys. Next up, we have Zeke Said So writes, what is your favorite movie theater experience? For me, it was The Dark Knight Rises. I was in a packed theater and the auditorium sounded like a rock concert. And the credits started. Everyone gave it a standing ovation. Thanks for all you do. I have a couple of really memorable movie-going experiences. One of them obviously was the Force Awakens. I think The Force Awakens is fantastic. I love that one. How that turned into The Rise of Skywalker, I have no idea. But being able, I was lucky enough to go to the premiere of it. Being in the Chinese theater, where the first Star Wars, you could feel the history. Being there for the premiere, in the same theater that the first Star Wars premiered in so many years ago was fantastic. I remember being in theater watching the first Lord of the Rings film, seeing the Shire and the world of Middle-earth brought to life for the first time that I had read about so many times as a kid, and I just read those books so much, and to see it brought to life was amazing. But honestly, I think my favorite movie-going experience, oddly enough, was a press screening of the first Avengers movie. And I'll just never forget this because I'm in this packed theater, the El Capitan Theater in Hollywood. It's a theater that's owned by Disney. And the theater's filled with all these, jagged, crusty film critics, there for a press screening. And it was like being at the Super Bowl. Like the amount, I don't know the last time I felt that kind of energy in a theater. Like these crusty, cranky, jaded film critics losing their bananas. And like Hulk, when Hulk was doing his thing, like everybody losing their minds. And I still remember coming out of the theater and so many people just stood outside of the theater talking for like an hour. And like everybody, and I felt myself shaking, and I had my wife there with me. And that was one of my, not my favorite movie of all time, but one of my truly favorite movie-going experiences of all time. Thanks for sharing that, Zeke. All right, next up. Noxie writes, who do you have for Fury v. Joshua? Fury. I think Tyson destroys him. He's too unorthodox and superior skills. His movement is way better, has a much better chin, and can throw heavy punches on par with Joshua's, honestly. AJ has, I wouldn't say no chance. I would not say no chance. Fury is a weird beast, man. Because you look at him and you think he's just this lumbering monster of a dude, right? And of course you look at him and you think that, right? He is a sweet tactician. For a guy his size, his movement, like I've seen fights where he has stood there in front of his opponent and kind of pulled an Anderson Silva where the opponent's just throwing all these punches and like Tyson Fury's just like, and he's just standing there making the guy look stupid as the guy's standing right in front of him, throwing punch after punch after punch. And Tyson Fury's just boom, 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 doom, 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 dodging him. And it's like, and then the accuracy of his, it's crazy, man. But no chance. I wouldn't say that, but I would have Fury. Laura writes, weird question. Did George Lucas sell his company outright to Disney or did he keep a percentage? I believe he sold it outright, but part of that sale was paid off in stock in Disney. So he is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think George Lucas is either the biggest or the second biggest individual shareholder in Disney stock. I can't remember. It's either first, second, or third. Like he owns a lot of Disney stock. So in a way, he still kind of, sort of, is a part owner of Star Wars in that way, but just as an individual, he was not. That's the difference there. All right, next up. Who was that? That was Laura. Next up, we've got Boosters the Name. And Boosters the Name writes, hey, John, what kind of role do you think John Walker, U.S. agent, will play in Falcon and Winter Soldier? Will he be a poor man's Captain America and ultimately a villain or just another throwaway character? Man, it's been a while since we talked about that. I remember we brought that up when it was first kind of revealed and we saw some on-set things there. I'm really not sure. And, I've had a lot of people after that one episode write in and say, well, in the comics he did this and the comics. Yeah, I don't know that that's really given us anything to go on right now, to be honest with you. I don't know if that's anything we can rely on. They may go completely out of left field with it. So I really don't know. But here's the exciting thing for me about Falcon and Winter Soldier right now. I really don't know anything about it. Other than, Zemo is going to be in it. And some of the other characters that are going to be involved in it. And apparently now Pugh is going to be in it as Black Widow's sister. So no idea. That's a new piece of information. But other than that, I really don't know much about what it's going to be about. And without having any kind of point of reference as to really what it's going to be about, it's hard to say what the role of any individual character may be because I don't have a reference point right now. And for me, that's actually kind of exciting. But I remember when they first announced and they showed pictures of him in there, it's like, whoa, that could be that opens up a lot of possibilities. So we'll see how they go with that booster. A good question. All right. King Artos of Monteval writes, Disney did not say much about the upcoming FX show, Why the Last Man. True. I know it's based on a comic series. I think the concept is really fun. It kind of reminds me of an old Fox show, Sliders. The episode, Love Gods, where a bioweapon kills most of the men. I'm not familiar with that episode. So for those of you guys who don't know anything about Why the Last Man is a graphic novel series where it's a world where some kind of pandemic happened and everybody with the chromosome, all males, died. And there's only women left in the world, except for this one guy and his pet monkey. This one guy was the last surviving male. Now, for a long time, Shia LaBeouf was connected to star in a Why the Last Man movie. They had a director, and Shia LaBeouf for a couple of years was attached to star in that. And it just never really came to fruition. So that kind of went away. And then this thing about a series came, and I don't know much about where they're at with it. It's kind of like the Monsters at Work property. I'm not really sure where they're at with that right now. To be honest with you, I'm not saying it's gone. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying right now, it's kind of fallen off my radar. I'm not really sure where they're at with it. If it does continue to go, I'm as fascinated by it today as I've been since the first day they announced it. All right, James LH writes, Hey, John, one of two. My favorite film villain is Vader. Yeah, mine too, obviously. So I thought I would share some of my other favorite villains. Just to be clear, I don't like the characters, just the performances. Any stand out to you in no order? Pacino as Corleone. Hackman is Hackman is Little Bill. I just did this big discussion about Unforgiven. Hackman as Little Bill is so great. Heath Ledger's Joker. Fiennes, Ray Fiennes in Schindler's List. Christoph Waltz as Hans Lada. Yeah, that is one of the best ones in recent years. Him as the Jew killer, the Jew hunter, I should say, one of the best villainous performances in the last number of years. Louise Fletcher as Nurse Ratched, Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, Michael Douglas as Gecko, Kevin Spacey in Seven, the Usual Suspects, Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham and Hans Gruber. I get into arguments with friends of mine sometimes. Listen, Hans Gruber from Die Hard, obviously right up there, one of the top villains of all time. And I know I'm alone in this, but I am telling you, Alan Rickman's Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is real close, is a real close second to his greatest villainous performances. I love his Sheriff of Nottingham. Like, almost irrationally, I love his Sheriff of Nottingham. You, 735, and bring a friend. I mean, it's just, why spoon, cousin? Ricardo Montalban is Khan, great. Gary Oldman is Leon, Henry Fonda, Frank, Lee Van Cleef, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and Andy Serkis as Gollum. These are all great. It's a great list, man. It's a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous list. Kevin Spacey, I mean, that is one of the best twist endings ever. Even though that's one of the rare big twist endings that I predicted before it happened, I don't often do that. But yeah, that one, Kaiser Soze is great. But yeah, so many of those are good. But honestly, one of the best in the last number of years, in the last decade plus, is Christoph Waltz as Hans Lada. Just so good in it. All right, Taki75 writes, Lily James is cast as Pamela. And oh yeah, I saw about this. Lily James and Bucky, Sebastian Stan are in this. I read about this. Lily James is cast as Pamela Anderson in a Hulu series about her relationship with Tommy Lee. In other news, Kevin Hart will star in a Shaquille O'Neal biopic. But here's the thing, it's not only her. Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier himself, is cast as Tommy Lee. It's I'm not going to lie to you, one of the first celebrity sex tapes I ever saw way back in the day. But Pamela Anderson, good Canadian kid, by the way. I am fascinated by this, particularly with the casting. Because you guys know I have a deep love for Lily James. I just think she's stupid talented, and breathtakingly beautiful and all that kind of stuff. And Sebastian Stan, a guy a lot of people want to see play as a young Luke Skywalker. That one's going to be interesting, Taki. All right, Key Lime Killer writes, All I'm hoping to see in the next Mandalorian is Moff Gideon's face get half blown off, just like in Breaking Bad. That is seriously one of the coolest moments in TV, where the explosion goes off. He comes walking out of the room, and you see him side profile, adjusts his tie like he would, and then he turns, and his face is gone. That is seriously one of the coolest shots in television history right there. All right, Tom Cruise writes, wear your effing mask, people. I'm trying to save the movie industry, and most importantly, I'm trying to help save lives. Indeed, yeah, I am 100% behind Tom Cruise's comments. Again, I sometimes, you guys know this, I'm not going to be disingenuous. You know, sometimes I find, Tom Cruise to not be all there. You know that. But I think what he said was very poignant and right on the money. And he was absolutely right and absolutely justified. And I'm still amazed he didn't fire the guys. He let them keep their jobs. Appa's new fan writes from Kim's Convenience. First, thank you for the Kim's Convenience suggestion. Love that show. Second, I was watching your movie with my girlfriend a week ago. Thank you so much for that. Yesterday, she was quoting parts of your movie during a debate over movie trailers, and she's not a movie fan. Well done, John and crew. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for checking out my movie. I appreciate that, and thank you for the kind words, and your girlfriend is clearly a woman of taste and distinction. Just want to throw that out there, Apples. And I'm glad you're watching Kim's Convenience, man. I am so in love with that show. Season 5 comes in January. Cannot wait. All right, next up. Mark C. writes, I absolutely disagree with film sets being declared essential. With that thought and knowing Mission Impossible 7 has already been shut down due to COVID, Cruise was right to call this out. If they wish to keep working, they need to be doing it better than anyone else. That's the part that I think a lot of this gets brushed under the thing. This was a set that had already been shut down due to COVID. Twice. Once general, because everything was shut down for everybody. But then they specifically had to shut down because some cases popped up on their set. So they'd already been cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, threw off their schedule, which costs more money later on, and cost a lot of people money. And it hurt them. And that had already happened. And then here comes Tom Cruise, the star of the series and the producer of the series, and seeing idiots not following the safety rules that has already shut down their production. What do you think he's going to say? How do you think he's going to feel? How do you think your boss is going to react? Listen, if you worked at some massive tire manufacturer, right? And somebody in the company broke a rule that ended up shutting down the company for 9 days. And they lost millions in revenue and all that kind of stuff over the 9 days. How do you think the boss of that tire manufacturer plant is going to react if he walks now in a couple of months later and sees a couple of idiot employees doing the exact same thing, breaking the rules that caused them to be shut down before? He's going to lose his freaking mind. And maybe not. Maybe he'll just fire them on the spot. He'll just fire them on the spot. Get the hell out. Again, I'm impressed Cruise didn't fire them. I really am. I think he showed insane, while freaking out and losing his temper, he maintained enough calm to not just fire them on the spot, which I thought was, pretty impressive, to be honest with you, pretty impressive. Let's see. Where are we at here? That was Mark C. All right, next up. Zachary Bartron writes, hey, John, it's been a while. Good to have you here, Zachary. I was wondering, with it being almost a year since The Rise of Skywalker premiered, do you believe Disney will ever release any deleted stuff from the film, or will we always be stuck with only the released film? Well, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get, J.J. Abrams shot down the thing about there being a J.J. cut, but every movie has deleted scenes. Every movie does. So I would not be surprised if over the years, some other, things that ended up on the cutting room floor come and resurface again. But will we get like a re-envisioning of The Rise of Skywalker? I can't see them doing that. I don't think there's anything to be gained for them doing that. So my guess is no. Some other stuff on the cutting room floor re-emerging? Yes. But an actual like redux of the movie, I don't think we'll probably get that, Zachary. Probably not. I don't see there being any upside to it. So can't imagine Disney would either. But hey, anything's possible. All right, next up, CD2197 writes, I'm on Tom's side with this COVID rant. This has gone on far too long because of people just not adhering to the rules. Just finally started to watch Rebels 2, and for the first time since Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars is back. That was my first Star Wars. Loved your documentary. Thank you so much for that, CD. And yeah, look, it's a basic fundamental thing of this. Like I said earlier in the show, I don't think whoever these idiots were, I don't think they were purposely just trying to say, let's stick it to the man and break the rules. They probably just weren't thinking. But that is a problem. When you are in a place, especially like a movie set, and you're not constantly thinking about how do my actions affect the people around me? How could my actions in a detrimental way hurt other people that I'm working with or hurt the company that I am being employed by and paid by? How does my actions affect other people? And that's not just a problem on a set. That is a problem in our society. That people just don't give a crap about, or never take a second to think about, hey, how are decisions that I make right now going to affect people around me? And that is a problem with all of us, I think. I'm not going to point the fingers at any individuals. It's all of us. I think that's a fundamental problem and flaw in all of our characters that we need to probably shape up over. All right, next up. Josh writes, read Warner Brother Media head Jason Kilar's Variety op-ed yet? Spends 10 paragraphs justifying Warner Brothers' move, leading from the front, innovation, building from the past, without mentioning the actual reasons this has nuked WB's reputation. It's actually astounding. Yeah, he didn't help anything. It was all PR, and it was bad PR, and it did nothing to... Here's the problem. There are a number of valid concerns, issues, and things that have been brought up by a lot of different filmmakers, from Judd Apatow, James Gunn, Denis Villeneuve, Chris Nolan, from production partners like Legendary Pictures, who's going to be taking Warner Brothers to court. And this article, didn't address any of them. It didn't address any of them, and that's a problem. So anyway, we'll probably talk about that on another episode at some point, but thanks for bringing that one up, Josh. The Nerdy Teacher Patreon writes, hey, John, watching your show about D&D, I thought how cool it'd be if John decided to do a one-shot Star Wars D&D DC Heroes adventure with a handful of Patreon supporters. Just throwing that out there, and please think of me as a player. I probably won't do that, but it's not something that hasn't crossed my mind. I mean, look, first of all, role-playing is best in person. And that's, I haven't played a role-playing game in a while. Not since the COVID pandemic started. And participates in a weekly D&D game virtually. I'm not really down for doing it virtually per se. I like doing it in person. Plus, for me, a role-playing game is a thing that you do with friends. And that's why I've never really thought about just getting some random strangers together to do a role-playing game. That takes a lot of the magic out of a role-playing game session. You know what I mean? Not to mention, it would take a lot of time to pull something like that together. And I just don't have the time to do that. But it's not something that hasn't crossed my mind. But maybe at some point I'll come up with a way that we could actually pull something like that off and do it easily. So I don't know. It's something I'll keep in the back of my head, Nerdy Teacher. Thanks for that. All right, Gabby writes, I know the Daredevil in the MCU thing is not real or important for now, but if Matt Murdock is ever going to come into the MCU, do you think it would be Charlie Cox? Even if it's a new version, I think it should be him. If not, people will riot. People won't riot. Look, I know we all think everybody, like every human being, is a driveling idiot that can't equate two simple things at the same time. People aren't stupid, and people can mentally deal with things. Whether or not it's Charlie Cox, I don't know. And by the way, saying that I know the Daredevil in the MCU thing is not real. I don't know that it's not real. Let's just be clear. I don't know that it's not real. I don't buy it right now because I'm not hearing it from reliable sources like the actual real news trades. They're not reporting on this at all. But I don't know it's not real. We live in a world where Jamie Foxx is coming back as Electro. Anything can happen. I mean, Marvel and Netflix would have had to have made a really complex legal agreement for this iteration for Charlie Cox to appear on screen as Matt Murdock. There would have to be some legal finagling to do that, but it's possible. Let's not discount it as not possible. Now, I don't think right now, until I see more information and more evidence, I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think Charlie Cox is going to end up in Spider-Man 3. But I don't know that he's not. And that's an important distinction. We always got to remember, especially as film fans, but in all of life, there is a difference between what we know and what we believe. There's a difference. I don't know that Charlie Cox isn't coming back. I don't think he is. I don't believe he is, but I don't know that he's not. So let's keep that in mind. In general, listen, unless some specific legal deal was made between Disney and Netflix, they couldn't just bring Charlie Cox back as the same character. That would violate Netflix's rights, because while Daredevil belongs to Disney, that specific iteration of Daredevil belongs to Netflix. And if Disney just decided, let's just cast Charlie Cox anyway and just say it's a different Daredevil, they would be in very, very precarious legal position. They could get sued heavily by Netflix and probably lose. Again, that's assuming that they don't make some kind of back channel deal in advance, which they could do. So yeah, where I'm at right now is I don't believe we're going to get Charlie Cox in there. I believe we will see Matt Murdock in the MCU at some point. I believe we will see Daredevil in the MCU at some point, but it is going to be a definitively different and new Daredevil than the one we had in Netflix. Do I know that? Nope. Do I believe that right now? Yes. But listen, intelligent people, which is all of you, we adapt what we believe when presented with new information. And you know, if tomorrow the Hollywood Reporter, who has real proven Hollywood insiders and sources and things like that, if the Hollywood Reporter reports tomorrow that actually, yeah, Charlie Cox is coming back as Daredevil, guess what? Then we have to adjust what it is we believe in light of new evidence that comes forward. So we'll see. So right now, I don't know that Charlie Cox isn't coming back. I believe he's not coming back, but that can change. That can change. And the audience will be fine. The audience will be totally fine. That's like saying, you know, oh, they're bringing Spider-Man into the MCU. Better be Andrew Garfield or people are going to riot, or better be Tobey Maguire or people are going to riot. No, they were fine. We were fine. They introduced a new Spider-Man. Tom Holland's been great in the role. A lot of people love him. Just a lot of people, he's their favorite Spider-Man. And everything's good. And everything's good. All right, guys, we're almost through all the questions here, but we just run out of time. So for Josh, I'm speaking, Ryan Lohner. Don't worry, guys. We will start off tomorrow's live portion part of the show by taking your questions first. You sent in the questions. We will get to those. But we have run out of time. We've gone over the 2-hour mark, so we've got to check out here at this point. But in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for being here and making this show a part of your day. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett for adding his glory and goodness to the show. And a special thank you to all of you guys who sent in these comments and questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel while you did it. And all of us here associated with the John Campea Show, thank you guys very, very much for that. Guys, please remember, do the 4 main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you, or Tom Cruise will come to your house and rip you a new one. All right, guys, that'll do it for me. We'll be back again tomorrow. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.